You may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And of course, please permit me to extend through you, Madam Presiding Officer, a warm Tobago welcome to our esteemed Ambassador. And Madam Presiding Officer, also allow me to extend to my colleagues and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Happy New Year and all the best for 2025. Madam Presiding Officer, this motion brought before us today is nothing short of mischievous, vexatious, and downright hypocritical. It is an attempt by this Chief Secretary to mask the glaring failures of this administration. Madam Presiding Officer, it is no secret that under this Chief Secretary's watch, they have prevailed over the most murderous situation on the island. And if you are to do the analysis, per population, Tobago has even a greater crime issue than even when compared to Trinidad. Madam Presiding Officer, it is important to understand and to appreciate that even as we speak, this Chief Secretary callously, carelessly, basically sent out an open invitation to criminals. It is beyond troubling that the Chief Secretary would so carelessly air sensitive national security issues in a way that could alert criminals.
Minority Leader, I'm going to caution you with your inferences.
Point of order, Madam Presiding Officer.
Madam.
Point of order.
Do you give way?
No, Madam Presiding. He will have his time
He
to
has
offer.
to stand on a point of order.
Point of order is not a point of clarity.
He will have his
point-
time to...
Have a seat,
No
minority.
standing orders.
A point of order. He has his way. Continue, Chief Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. The standing orders is clear about imputing improper motives.
I just warned him
And
against that.
I wish you to not just warn, but to halt the member from so doing. Additionally, let me be abundantly clear. Any information shared today was clear with national security before sharing it.
Chief Secretary, Assemblyman Augustine and Assemblyman Morris, this is a very sensitive topic. So all members would be cautioned as to your language and information that you are about to put there. Continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, and it is for this very reason why I am concerned that such sensitive matters of national security is being placed in the public domain in the way that we just heard. Madam Presiding Officer, matters like these aren't for public show. They require quiet, serious discussions with the right people, like the Minister of National Security. And I have no doubt that this Minister of National Security would be willing to facilitate a conversation, only if the Chief Secretary will answer his calls. Because we know he has a challenge with taking calls and returning calls. That is public information. And therefore, I am flabbergasted that this kind of information is being discussed in the public domain in this kind of way. Madam Presiding Officer, but what are the facts? The Chief Secretary has just told the world that there is no patrolling of the... Madam. The Chief Secretary is giving the world that the Chief Secretary is on record as giving the world the impression that in this country called Trinidad and Tobago, there's absolutely no patrolling of our borders. And that is absolutely incorrect, absolutely misleading. And Madam Presiding Officer, let me share the facts. Because perhaps that situation existed in the time of his friends, the UNC in 2015, when they canceled the OPVs, those OPVs vessels.
Members, we allowed for Assemblyman Augustine to present uninterrupted. Please be guided by the standing orders of this House. When a member is presenting, there should be no interruptions. Thank you.
Madam Presiding Officer, so his friends canceled the OPVs in 2015 and left our borders open. But what did the PNM administration do, Madam Presiding Officer? The fact is the central government has made substantial and proactive investments in maritime security. That is a fact. In 2021, because yes, you don't discuss national security in public like your reckless chief secretary.
Assemblyman Morris, please have a seat. Assemblyman James.
Thank you.
I think by now you should know better. No cross-talking. Everybody would have a fair opportunity to do their presentation. Thank you.
Madam Presiding
Please
Officer, I understand their anxiousness when their friends' names are called. I understand it. But Madam Presiding Officer, I'm providing the facts. In 2021, the introduction of two long-range offshore patrol vessels, CG-41 and CG-62, marked a significant enhancement in our maritime surveillance. That is a fact. These vessels are actively, and the ministers publicly placed that on the record of the Parliament just 2 days ago. They are actively patrolling our waters. So therefore, that insinuation by the Chief Secretary that there's no patrolling is absolutely false, absolutely reckless, and absolutely misleading, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, yet the Chief Secretary comes here and continuously falsely claims insufficient resources. Let us remember the disastrous legacy of his UNC allies. Under their tenure, as I mentioned, they canceled the OPV contracts that would have ensured 25 to 30 years of reliable border security, and instead, they procured that very Cape-class vessel that is now down Staubles Bay. That is their record that they purchased from the Chinese government, and that decision has been proven to be ineffective and wasteful. The record is clear, Madam Presiding Officer. The PNM has acted decisively to secure our borders, while the UNC left Tobago exposed. Madam Presiding Officer, please, I ask the member to retract. She said I will. Madam Presiding Officer, facts and the truth is immune to those on the other side. So I understand their challenge. The PNM, let's talk about resource allocation, because if one was to believe the Chief Secretary, you would believe that there's absolutely nothing happening in terms of national security. In one breath, he trumps up all the achievement of the TTPS. But who is resourcing the TTPS? Is it by abracadabra that these things are happening? It is through decisive action of the Ministry of National Security and the National Security Council headed by the Prime Minister. The record of this PNM government has consistently allocated resources to bolster Tobago's security infrastructure. The PNM is the administration after we were neglected in Tobago here. When the UNC came in 2010, the Orville London administration would have already agreed with the Manning administration at that time to build 2 modern police stations. And what did their friends do? Their friends left those 2 important projects untouched. And it took a PNM administration led by a Tobago Prime Minister to take those projects and bring it back to fore, even when the country was facing significant financial challenges. So we built a police station for the people of the East, Far East in Roxborough. And then we built a police station for the people in the West at Kelvon. We didn't stop there. The fire service officers in Far East had a challenge with their location, and therefore that fire service was deemed, the building was compromised. And it was a PNM administration caring and loving the people of Tobago, ensure that we built a brand new modern fire station for the people of Roxborough. That is the PNM record, Madam Presiding Officer. So to come here and give the impression that somebody don't like Tobago and somebody just want to punish Tobago, with somebody who don't like you in the time where you have significant financial challenges across the country, take those same very scarce resources and ensure you get those important facilities. Because we heard the Chief Secretary in one breath tell us, yes, there are challenges across the country. So it's not only Tobago or only the fire officers where there are challenges. But to the best of the ability of this administration, national security receives one of the largest budgets across ministries. And that is shared across the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that we are kept safe. Madam Presiding Officer, that drug bust that the Chief Secretary referred to didn't happen by accident. It is national security working collaboratively with CARICOM partners and the international partners like Southcom that led to that seizure. And the efforts of national security is not isolated. So though you may not see the actions of outside forces, because national security does not start within the borders of Trinidad and Tobago. It starts further because we are a transnational shipment point for narcotics. That is a fact. And therefore it has to leave somewhere. So to give the impression that this issue is relegated to Trinidad and Tobago and somehow the Minister of National Security. And I want to remind the Chief Secretary, because you see, people who misrepresent the truth don't have memory. And he's on record here saying he told the Prime Minister to, what? What he said? To mind the business that you're responsible for. That disrespectful comment was specific in capital letters, and it is there for the world to see. Stay out Tobago business. That was the disrespectful nature of the Chief Secretary speaking to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So in one breath you're telling the Prime Minister, stay out, don't come here. But when you want to cast blame, you're there telling the Prime Minister, well, come now. So which one is it? Which one is it? And Madam Presiding Officer, let me continue on the infrastructural improvements. What are the facts? The PNM government has consistently prioritized infrastructure development in Tobago, and I mentioned the Scarborough Fire Station that the Chief Secretary mentioned is actively engaging the attention of the Cabinet. That is a matter that is soon to be resolved. Development and management of a country, all things cannot happen at the same time. Some things have to be prioritized, and therefore, yes, we know there would always be needs. You all are managing Tobago, can you do everything at the same time? Because you are dealing with scarce resources, and therefore, when you are dealing with scarce resources, you've got to prioritize how it is appropriated. And that is what management requires, especially prudent management. So you deal with the high priority issues, and then you treat with the issues as they come. The Chief Secretary calls for new facilities, ignores the substantial progress being made. You know, the Chief Secretary sometimes reminds me of that ungrateful little boy. That no matter where you give him, he always crying for more. And nothing could ever please the chief secretary. Because he just believe he entitled. And he don't even appreciate what he's getting or what is being done. This kind of behavior is not leadership, Madam Presiding Officer. It is a failure to act when action is needed. The PNM has consistently upheld the highest standards of accountability and transparency in public spending. Contrast that with his UNC friends. Compare that with his UNC friends and how they deal with procurement, because you hear him talking about that the procuring the scanner is taking so long. And perhaps he just wants the government to flout procurement practices, as we heard in the questions and answer today. But that is not the PNM way. The PNM understand that they have public servants with responsibilities that have to do public servant functions. And therefore, that is what is it. There's a procurement process in place, and therefore the government provides the resource, but the public officers have to implement. And therefore to come here and pretend like, again, is the government. So in one breath you have a secretary telling you she don't know how they procure and how they spend 16 million. But all of a sudden, in this instance, it is the government. So it's not you when it's your time to account. But you're good at pointing fingers at others. I learned you must cast the beam out of your eyes first before you take the beam out of others. And perhaps the chief secretary needs to mind Tobago business. He's the one that needs to mind Tobago business, rather than those trips in Trinidad on a weekend. Madam Presiding Officer, it is a travesty that the chief secretary who aligns himself with the same UNC, the ones that currently there's an issue, national security issue about procurement, because that very Chinese vessel that their friends procured, no, the Damian vessels that their friends procured, those are the smaller nearshore patrol vessels. Their friends procured that. And there's a current investigation in France where it is alleged that over $200 million out of the contract was caught up in some bribery, and that investigation is still ongoing. So we don't do it like that. No one could point fingers of my PNM administration in the central government.
Assemblyman
like
Morris, again, I'm going to caution you with the inferences. That's actually imputing improper motives against a member.
Who member?
You are aligning persons within this administration to persons who have bribery charges. I won't allow that here.
No. I said the UNC government. I didn't say any individual. And on top of that,
minority leader, one thing I'm not going to do is argue. Please be cautioned. You are cautioned about your inferences. You may continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, the information I've placed is information that is in the public record as reported in the daily newspapers. And of course, when it comes to this administration being aligned with EUNC, there's a photo with the Chief Secretary and the current leader of opposition where the UNC has over over their heads Team UNC. So it is on that basis I am aligning. It is. And that's on the UNC's page. That is on the UNC's page.
Members, Minority Leader, I'm going to ask you to retract that statement.
What?
I am going to ask you to retract this statement. No. Members, I am not going to allow any imputing of improper motives against any member in this House.
Who member have imputed? Madam President, can you point me to who member have imputed?
Minority Leader, are you challenging the chair?
I'm simply asking for clarification.
I simply said retract and move on.
Which aspect of the statement, Madam Presiding Officer, because I have to get the context. I've made a lot of points in that one statement.
Your last statement, retract and move on.
All right, I so retract. Madam Presiding Officer, and I'll move on. The point of the matter is, Madam Presiding Officer, what the Chief Secretary is attempting to do, recognizing that there's an election very closely, and they would have to come to account to the people of Tobago, and understanding that persons like himself and the Secretary of the Deputy Chief Secretary, when they were on this side, they accused the then Kelvin Charles administration of dereliction of duty, because they told Kelvin Charles the responsibility, notwithstanding what the law says, is that they are the Tobago House of Assembly, and they, if they don't, I think just to quote directly, this is posted on the Facebook page of the Deputy Chief Secretary, saying, the Chief Secretary then does not believe that crime in Tobago is the responsibility of the Tobago House of Assembly. Therefore, there is no specific anti-crime plan. So that is the Deputy Chief Secretary saying that because the Chief Secretary at the time said that they do not, under law, have responsibility for national security in Tobago, she took that to mean that they don't have a plan. And all I would simply ask, what has changed? Because if the Chief Secretary at that time was to be blamed, who should we now blame? And that is the fact. So this administration, having failed so recklessly, callously, and destructively, they are now trying to deflect. But I will remind the Chief Secretary of his responsibilities, because you see, what is the fact? The fact of the matter is that, yes, under the 6th schedule, crime prevention and resourcing crime prevention is the responsibility of the Ministry of National Security. But what about the prevention? What about treating and dealing with the causation, the causative factors of crime? Who is responsible for that? Who is responsible for that 12-year-old that we heard from Tobago that is in a gang? Who is responsible for that young man who lost his life so tragically that went to Signal Hill Secondary School? Who is responsible for that? Should the Minister of National Security come and teach us here in Tobago how to obey the law, how to build good families, how to provide resources such as playing grounds and ensure we have youth programs and policies? Should the Minister of National Security come and determine that here in Tobago? And will we allow him to come and determine that in Tobago? So, Madam Presiding Officer, the THA has a significant role in crime prevention through its socio-economic policies and its programs. Under this administration, policies and initiatives that could deter criminal behavior have been dismantled. Recreational facilities across Tobago have been left in ruin, and they're talking about this project in WIM. Let me make it abundantly clear. Yes, this project has been outstanding for some time, but this project is a project that, because of the changing needs of the people of WIM, have been redesigned and remodeled, because the people of WIM determined it started off as we wanted simply a building. And then when that project, and I could talk with a level of confidence, because that is a project that was the brainchild of former area representative Assemblyman Claudia Groom-Duke, to treat with challenges of this very nature, crime. And because the people of WIM determined at that time, we don't just want the skills training building, the young fellas started to play football there. I created a program called Save Night Football, Sports Against Violence and Drug Abuse. That is the record of this area representative for the people of WIM. And we started that program, that project there. And when the villagers enjoyed that so much, they determined we also want to have some kind of sporting, recreational facility to be included. So the scope had to change, and of course that would create delays. But that project, just prior to the PNM demitting office, was about 90% completed. What has happened for the last 3 years? You have received a project that was 90% completed, but because the one person who stands as representative of the people of WIM is the PNM candidate, you have left that project to rot. That is the fact. So don't come here trying to mislead Tobagonians.
Member, you have 5 minutes.
I will use that five minutes judiciously because I have some more things to say. Madam Presiding Officer, you see, this administration has overseen the dissemination of the construction sector, so there are economic factors as well. Because as soon as they came in, they blacklisted the main contractors on the island who hired over hundreds and hundreds of young people and families. And when you denied and derailed and took away those opportunities, it meant you had 100 people on blocks doing absolutely nothing. And after I had these young men hopeless, the drug lords came in. So the facts are there. 2023, we only had 21 gangs. 2024, under this hapless, hopeless, uncaring, dysfunctional administration, we have risen to over 41 gangs. Is the Minister of National Security to be held accountable for that? That is your record. That is your failed policies. That is the failed policies of putting all the contracts up to the point that a member shamelessly stood here and couldn't even confirm if he met with a contractor. He don't know. He don't even know. But Madam Presiding Officer, so they have dismantled the no playing fields, private sector crash, and on top of that, they themselves are in circles, as heard in a voice record, which they confirmed was them, was plotting to misuse public funds. So them themselves, they possibly, they are currently under criminal investigation, Madam Presiding Officer.
Minority Leader, I just cautioned
sorry,
you.
No, I'm just saying
Anything before the court
okay.
is sub judice and cannot be spoken within this house.
It hasn't reached the court yet.
I don't know that. And anything that is before the court cannot be spoken within this house. You are out of order, and I am asking you to retract that statement and continue.
Under criminal investigation? No, I can't say that they are under criminal investigation, Madam Presiding Officer.
I just cautioned you that anything that is before the courts is sub judice. Please be familiar. I don't know that.
It's before the police, not the court.
I don't know that. Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah.
Did you hear what I just said? I am cautioning you.
Wait, told me retract.
I am cautioning you.
I stand guided, Madam Presiding Officer. But the point that is being made is that the fish does only rot from the head. So if the head rotten, what else you expect? And if you have criminals in an enterprise, in government, or in an administration.
Madam Presiding Officer, I sit here and I'm listening, and I want to invoke Standing Order 45.5. The member continues to impute improper motives against the members of this administration, and I do not think that we should continue to allow that in this house. In addition to that, I stand on a point of order. The member indicated before that under this administration, the amount of gangs arose to 41. I listened to the member's presentation. That is incorrect. The number of gangs based on the report that was submitted is 28. So it will do him well to listen when the presentations are being made, so he doesn't stand in the house talking lies and submitting all of us
please,
to this rhetoric.
members, please sit.
Thank you.
Please sit. I acknowledge your contribution, Councillor Boris. I'm also going to caution you all, everyone, each member here, that there is something called unparliamentary language. There's a standing order that guides what you can and cannot say against members of this House. Retract
Yes,
and move on.
Madam
And
Presiding
you
Officer.
have a couple seconds left.
Madam President, I want some injury time.
You have a couple seconds left.
Madam Presiding Officer, so let me just,
Wrap up.
Madam Presiding Officer, so all this requires is for big people to sit down and talk about serious issues. We passed a motion in this House where we asked, we agreed that we will all go to the Parliament and have a conversation. The Chief Secretary ignored that. So what he's coming to the House to tell the House about give him authority to do? The Chief Secretary will do whatsoever he wants to do. And this is my position, Madam Presiding Officer. I retract this statement, and also I am amend, because I just looked at the notes. It is in 2024, there was 2019, 24 gangs, and in 2022, he said Tobago had an additional 4 gangs.
Thank you,
All
Assemblyman
right, so
Morris.
thank you.